Hey guys, what's going on? Banana156 here with another video. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, do all that stuff. Make sure to leave a comment. I do read all comments. And leave a dislike if you dislike the video. And if you disagree with anything I say in this video or have any questions, leave a comment below and I'll respond. This video is the second part to a video I uploaded on my channel last week. It was 3 countries that will be superpowers. And this will be 3 more countries that will be superpowers. You don't have to watch the first one to watch this one, but if you did enjoy this video, go watch the first one, or you could watch the first one now if you want. But yeah, in this video I'm going to be going over 3 countries that have potential to become superpowers in the coming century, and that I think have a really good chance of maybe becoming something. If you guys haven't been paying attention, the US is beginning to pull out of a lot of regions, and that is causing power gaps and a lot of ability for nations to do more things and conquer more lands and become more powerful. And along with the US pulling out, it means that there's a lot more room for regional powers to form that could become superpowers. Like in the previous video, I talked about how a lot of sub-Saharan Africa could become an empire or something like that, because the nations don't make sense in their current form, and it leaves great opportunity for something to form there and become a regional power and potentially a superpower. Or like in the Middle East, there's a couple good candidates there, like Iran and Turkey. They could both become superpowers as well. So in this video I'm going to be talking about 3 countries that could become superpowers in the future because of different factors, and all of them do have their downsides as well as their upsides. But yeah, so let's get right into the video. The first country I want to talk about is India. As you all know, I'm going to go over the flaws of India first before I go over the positives. But one of the flaws is India's military record throughout its history is incredibly bad. They've lost far more wars than they've won. Their record is really bad. I'm not going to comment on like before AD records because those are bad, but you know, the military record has been fairly bad. I do hear that now that the military leadership is fairly good, but still that's something to mention when talking about a country that's fairly passive, and it's been fairly passive in its history and doesn't have a great military record. And when talking about flaws with India, or not flaws with it, potential inhibitors of becoming a superpower, you can't not mention China. China is like its neighbor to the north. It is more wealthy, more organized, more coherent as a nation, more industrialized, more militarized. It has basically everything on India, and that's a problem. And China is also damming up rivers such as the Ganges, the Brahmaputra, and the Indus, which is very bad for India. But India is an American ally, and if China beats America in a conflict, India would become a puppet state. But if the US beats China in the conflict, or some anti-Chinese organization pushes China back, India has a fairly good chance of becoming the power of Asia. Because of its great size, and because of its good size, the way it juts out in the Indian Ocean like a triangle gives it great possibility to be a naval power, and just the amount of people that live there, it has great potential to be a power if China were to lose or be more pushed back by America and other forces. So that, and not to mention, I did mention their naval power, which has surprisingly only been taken advantage of once by the Indians, by the Cholas going into Indonesia. But India has massive potential, but yeah. Now another flaw with it is its industrialization. I don't really know much about India, so take what I say with a grain of salt or whatever. But I can't really gauge where India is on industrialization, because industrialization seems to be very weird and very haphazard and divided, because in India, there are 2 million more slaves than people in Denmark. They have a huge slave population and a huge population living in the Iron Age, but they also have some incredibly high-tech sectors and very industrialized sectors as well. If I would compare it to anywhere, it would be like Tsarist Russia, where like industrialization is very different and the country is very divided in how it's been industrialized. But yeah, and another problem with it is Indian nationalism has basically been religious for the past couple of years, and with all the different, which I don't think is very good for them. I feel like they need to make it all Indian, like more a nationalism based on India, so they can include Pakistan. And I feel like with having all the different things there, it doesn't seem very coherent, because India as a nation has only lasted for 80 years, or has only been around for 80 years. There was a concept of India before that, but it doesn't seem like it could. It's not very coherent right now, and the only thing standing in their way is China and being a coherent nation as a whole, honestly. Now looking at their neighbors, it looks fairly easy for them. If India were to survive, Bangladesh would be pulled into its economic orbit because it's on the Gangetic Plain, and it just would, because it's a smaller, less powerful nation. Pakistan, by reasons I went over in the video that went out last week, is in a real tough spot and would be sucked into the orbit of India because of that. Same with Sri Lanka. It's a small, not very powerful nation. It would easily be sucked into the economic orbit of India. And Burma is a large rice exporter, so they could support a lot of rice to India's growing population, and that could create a good I guess, alliance with Burma. So their neighbors don't look fairly good besides China, and Central Asia isn't a problem either because of things we went over in the last video. The next country I want to talk about, which is kind of out of left field, is France. Now, France may seem a bit weird to you, but if you guys didn't know this, France has maintained a lot of influence in its former colonial empire. So yeah, France has maintained much of its colonial empire in Africa. They are currently fighting 4 wars in Africa as well. And out of Western European nations, they have been the most not passive and have been the most militarized. Like Germany, if the current generation maintains power, they are not militarizing anytime soon. Britain or England is in America's pocket, and so yeah, that leaves France as like the only military power there. And along with the U.S. beginning to pull out of the Mediterranean as a whole, that leaves the power gap for someone to take it. And with me predicting Egypt falling soon, the Suez Canal needs to be kept open as well. And who's a better guest than France? I feel like France could make allies of Italy and Spain and completely just take over the Mediterranean, be like the Mediterranean's policeman, and really create a power and be a power in the Mediterranean. And I feel like this would work out great for America and France because America and France basically completely like each other, and it makes sense for America to leave things that they're not interested in to France and let France do what they want to do, kinda. And they both have similar interests, and I think France is the only European nation that would be capable of doing this as well. And they also have the best demographics in Europe too. And it just seems like everything is going for France to become the Mediterranean power for the next century. And I could totally see France becoming a power in Africa and the Mediterranean, and eventually like maybe even like encroaching in the Middle East a little bit too. Maybe not entering the Middle East, but like being in Egypt and keeping the Suez Canal open, I think, is as far as they'll go. The next and final country I'm going to talk about is Turkey. Now, I think Turkey could become a really great superpower in the world, like pretty easily, because if you look at their economy and the industrialization, they are miles ahead of everyone else in the region. Like everyone else in the region, like Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, all of them are failed states, and the only real threat is Iran. And I feel like Turkey is more powerful than Iran currently. Not to mention places like Saudi Arabia and Egypt, I think will fall soon. So they have massive advantage over everyone else in their area, along with having a good Muslim identity. With being mainly Sunni, they could do like what Iran did with the Shia and become like the Sunni capital of the world and unify a lot of the Middle East based on that. Just because of that Islamic identity. Not to mention, the whole region is just asking for someone to stabilize it, because it's incredibly unstable, and with the Americans beginning to pull out, it leaves a huge power gap, and I think Turkey is the most likely to fill it, because they have a good military and they have an imperialist culture as well, which means they are prime candidates to take it. And their other neighbors, the Baltics, are already failed states, and they're not going to fall anytime soon, but they're not a threat either. And I could totally see Turkey coming in and taking it, and the only major problem with them is that their leadership has put them in massive amounts of debt, but their debt has gone to things like infrastructure and assets, so even if they do file for bankruptcy, they can still keep those assets. And I feel like even if they do, they can get a bailout from one of the major powers like China or something. But I could totally see them uniting the entire Middle East, and if they were to do this and take Saudi Arabia, they would have a huge amount of oil, which makes them a world power by default. And they could unite the Islam under the Sunni, or they could unite the Sunni across the Middle East, and it just makes total sense for them to take power in that region. And they are a fairly coherent they're a pretty coherent nation, and it just seems like it's either, well, first of all, with America pulling out of the region, it's going to be them or Iran that takes over the region. It's going to be one of those two countries, and I think Turkey's more likely than Iran, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Iran either. But one of those two nations will take control of the Middle East. I almost guarantee it. Not entirely, but yeah, one of those two nations will take the area, and I think Turkey is the favorite. But yeah, thank you guys all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, do all that stuff. I do read all comments, so make sure to leave one. And if you dislike the video, leave a dislike. And if you have a question or a disagreement, leave a comment below and I can answer it or discuss it there. But yeah, thank you all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys